Hi friends, it's Lisa Hetrick, illustrator for Gina K Designs, and I'm so grateful you could join me today. Okay, so we have a super fun card today. It's a washy watercolor stamping card, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm just feeling spring even though we're still kind of in the winter here. So I thought it would be fun to mash some colors together, some really fun stamps from my Today and Always stamp set, and create this super bright washy watercolor card. Okay, so we've got a really fun color palette. I've got a mix of Distress Oxide inks here. I've got Squeezed Lemonade, Twisted Citron, Candied Apple, and Picked Raspberry. And I'm going to be using these oxide inks because they're super fun to create watercolor effects with lots of water and lots of mist. They really take it really well, and I kind of use them a little bit differently than some of the ways they're used. There are a ton of fabulous videos here on YouTube that have a lot of Distress Oxide techniques, but I'm going to just play with it a little bit differently today. I've got a piece of my B watercolor paper from B Paper Company. I love this paper. I know everyone hears me say that all the time. I also have a piece of Wild Dandelion cardstock cut to an A2 size card. I love it. And my B watercolor paper is just kind of a layering piece that I'm going to put on that bright and sunny piece of cardstock. I've got another piece of cardstock cut from my sentiment on that B watercolor paper. But we're first going to start with the stamping, and I'm going to get started by wetting the entire piece of cardstock. So not super juicy, but just getting a nice layer of water on it, because I'm going to dive right in with the big flower and just start stamping and watch it move. Okay. And it just, I just love it. Okay, and I'm going to clean up my stamp. I don't usually do that. And just go ahead and stamp again and stamp off. And right now I'm doing like a wet on wet technique. So the ink is wet and I'm stamping the Distress Oxide into the wet cardstock. And I'm working kind of fast, even though I've sped this video up just a smidge. I'm working kind of fast because I don't want the paper to dry. I want to keep it loose and washy. So I'm going to hit it again with some water and just kind of let the colors blend and flow with the water in the cardstock. So now it's getting a little bit more watery. You can see that candied apple is starting to spread and flow. I want to get it to move a little bit more, so I'm spraying some more water on it and just kind of moving and tilting that cardstock around to get that beautiful color. Now, it might seem like a hot mess when you do this, but remember, with any kind of water-based medium or this Distress Oxide ink specifically, when it dries, it is going to tone its hue back. So it's going to tone itself down, and it's going to be a lot lighter than the way it appears right now. But I kind of like it. I kind of think the hot mess is kind of fun. Okay, moving on. I've got the Lemon Drop Distress Oxide ink here, and I'm just kind of mashing it down onto my craft mat. I'm going to wet it up, and I'm going to grab that piece of cardstock that I'm using for my sentiment and just drag it through it. Just drag it through and just let that water kind of flow. And the reason why I did this, that color, that Squeezed Lemonade, is a really nice color, but and it's very bright. It's vibrant. It's got a lot of chroma in it. It's really super bright. So I just wanted to get some of that color onto the cardstock, but not at full strength where it'll just get into the rivets and the texture of the cardstock. I wanted it to be nice and flowy. Okay, so I have the two leaf images from the Today and Always stamp set. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm just nesting them up on the block together, and I'm going to stamp them down at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my Candied Apple, and I'm just adding a little bit of that color on the stamp. And I've got the Picked Raspberry, I'm adding a little bit more color on the stamp, and I'm mashing my colors right on the stamp, adding a little bit of water. and then stamping it down onto that B watercolor paper, and then lift it up, and you've got that nice gradation of color, a lot of movement there. There's some of the white from the texture of the paper is showing through, and I'm going to leave that. We don't want it to be like super blendy. Just add a little mist of water just to kind of get those colors flowing together. And I am just going to fussy cut them out, and because that's how I do. I love to fussy cut. Okay, so this is the layer and it's dry. Look at the color. The colors have bled into each other. We've got this washy, flowy, floral look to it. And I know that some of you are thinking, oh, that's kind of a hot mess. It's kind of all mishmash together. But guess what? It's going to be amazing. I promise. Just stick with me. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment, and I'm mix mashing my sentiments up here onto this little strip. I'm using the amalgam ink. I'm going to get that sentiment really nice and juicy so that I can stamp it down onto that watercolor paper. And I'm not bringing out the MISTI. I'm just going to go rogue and go ahead and do this. So I'm taking the And Always from the Today and Always stamp set and just stamping it down. And because the amalgam ink is nice and juicy, I can do it once and get it down onto that piece of watercolor cardstock, and it's going to be great. So now in the center of this piece, I want to fit the word today in. Now, normally I would take this and put this in my MISTI and just make sure I go ahead and hit the cardstock like 2 or 3 times to get a really, really nice solid. But this time in the card, I'm not going for the solid. I really am going, I'm going to get a nice solid from the amalgam, but there is going to be some of the white that's going to shine through that sentiment. And that's what I'm really going for, because I really want to see that texture and that white coming through from the cardstock, because that just kind of adds to the whole watercolory, flowy, floral look and feel. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and trim this a little bit and just kind of trim a little triangle into this little sentiment piece and create like a little flag. And I'm going to use that flag and kind of nest it in with the little heart tail that I've got going in the Today stamp set. Just going to take a little bit of Connect glue and just add a little bit of glue to the back of this and just nest it right in there with the little heart tail on the end of Today. So it looks like those two elements, it just creates that nice connection between the Today and Always. And it creates another little layer there, which makes it kind of fun. Just trimming off that little extra edge so that it becomes part of the whole card. And I'm digging it. I love this. Okay, so I'm going to play around a little bit with the 2 leaf images and how I'm going to nest them and make them a part of the design. And I had them down low and I've moved them around a little bit, but I've really kind of settled on nesting them around the T because it creates that nice visual look between the leaves, the word Today, and it just kind of tails off with the And Always. So it just creates a nice visually pleasing look to the card. Super simple, doesn't add a lot of weight, but does add a nice little level of texture and dimension, and I'm just digging it. I'd like to use little edges and corners of stamped images to be my anchor points for adding embellishments too. So you can see that I've taken that leaf image and just kind of layered it right in between where the top bar of the T and the T meet. So kind of fun, super fun. Okay, so now it's just time to layer, just kind of assemble the card and get all the pieces together. The base is already done, and I'm going to add a little bit of the Connect glue to the back and just layer it right on top. And here's another look at the color palette, and here is the final look at the card and the way those color palettes have come together. So the pinks and the twisted citron and the squeezed lemon, and how all of the colors blend together to create this really super fun washy washy floral. You've got a little bit of a graphic look to this, but you also have a nice washed out look to some of the florals, and I'm super digging the way this card looks. That little bit of the wild dandelion cardstock that's peeking through around the edges helps kind of ground that squeezed lemonade that's sitting in the card base. And I just love this card. Oh, I hope you enjoyed today's card tutorial. Thanks so much for joining me. Please consider sharing the joy by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.